Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hadeen, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in Phoenix, Arizona. I want to help you take your business from being a job to a business, and from a business to an asset, because I want you to be able to walk away and still make money. That's what I want to do. I'm not saying you have to completely walk away, be hands off, but if you want to be on the floor and have someone run the office, let them do that. If you want to run the office and have people do the floor, we can make that happen. Every week we are interviewing different successful individuals within this industry to help you put together systems, processes, plans, procedures, all the good stuff to make those things happen and let you be a business owner. That being said, this week I've got Paul Treanor with me. He is just, he's all over the place. He's got a lot of responsibilities. And we're going to let him introduce himself. And so tell us what you do, and then we're going to get into your side hustle here, and we'll do that. Look at that. Who doesn't have a side hustle these days? I think it's just something around 2015, I feel, just switched, and everyone needs a side hustle now. Here I am running a podcast, right, as a flooring installer, and then I'm going to talk to the guy that, well, we'll get into what you do. So who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? And then we'll get into the other part of this.
Well, thank you first and foremost for bringing me on your show. I think it's exciting, and I listen frequently, and so it's kind of crazy that here I am sitting on it, and I'm about to talk about something that's not even really what I do for a living. So, I am Paul Treanor. I am the senior manager of content and community for the International Surface event, and that's part of Informa. And my job is to basically program the content and education and procure the speakers for Surfaces, Stone Expo, Tile Expo, all under that TICE umbrella.
And what are we actually here to talk about today? Because you're an expert at that, and you are amazing at your job. You make speakers feel great. You put us up on that stage, and it's hard to talk at a show when you show up and you are dressed to the nines, and then I'm like, oh, well, someone didn't give me the memo that I gotta dress up for these things, so I gotta bring it a little bit more. But no, I mean, you do it. You're wonderful at your job. I love the content you're putting together. You put everyone at ease. You make us feel excellent. But you've got another thing going on. So what is it? How'd you fall into it? Let's start digging into this a little bit.
All right, I'm a certified Pilates instructor.
Okay.
on the part time of things, pretty much every morning, somewhere probably between anywhere from 5:30 to 8 a.m. Pacific time, I'm probably on a studio mat doing Pilates with clients. Almost every morning. Sundays are kind of the one day I take off. Otherwise, it's Pilates time. It's like you and I had talked about just previously. It's one of those things that I got into, started enjoying, and then what I tell everyone not to do is don't monetize the thing that you love the most, because it changes it, and it has in some ways, but. That's where it all came from. I have been doing yoga for years. Love it, enjoyed it. And then the studio I go to that's not very far from my home, the studio owner says, "Why don't you do Pilates?" And I said, I've heard of it. I've had friends and colleagues in the past that have done it, but I really don't know anything about it. And it sounds really hard. The way they describe it, it sounds kind of gruesome and painful, and I just don't think I'm up for that. And she's like, "You're already 90% of the way there because of yoga. So all you're going to be adding in is really core and strength training." And I kind of had thought about it. And here's the impetus of what started this. I went to a doctor's appointment, routine doctor appointment, and the doctor took all the vitals, weight, temperature, and then height. And I was 5'9". I haven't been 5'9" since probably my early 20s. There was a little weird growth spurt that I had around 2021, and it took me to 5'10". I've been very proud of 5'10" ever since then. And they took away my 5'10" and said I was 5'9". I said, "Let's remeasure because I think you're wrong." And they were beholden. I am 5'9", and I thought I've lost an inch, and they're explaining to me, sir, you're almost going to be 50, and gravity for 50 years is pulling all the bones and all the cartilage and all the joints down, and that's normal. You have no bone problems. You're just shrinking. And I decided I was hell-bent on that point to get back that 1 inch. Some way, somehow, I'm going to find a way to pull top to bottom and get that 1 inch back. And I can honestly say, in my last doctor's appointment, they clocked me in at 5'10". So I did every trick in the book that I knew how to, like, lift up tall through the crown of the head, elongate the spine, step up really strong through the legs, and yeah, it worked.
Excellent. So good for you.
It's a little bit vanity and otherwise, but the solution was Pilates. That's what I decided to do. Is I'm going to find something that promotes strength, promotes the core, and elongates and movement and heavy flow. And because I was at a studio that had a number of Pilates classes, I was able to just jump in there, and that's what I selected it for.
Well, so let me have you define what Pilates actually is. So you were doing yoga, and now like my understanding from my basic like research real quick was that Pilates, like you said, is similar to yoga, but it involves the strength training along with the core. So can you define that a little bit more so that we have a clear idea of what it's actually doing for us?
Yeah. So very quickly, to give you a little bit of background, and I'll make it shorter than what I would normally give a client if I was doing an intake. Joseph Pilates is the inventor of the Pilates movement. He's an actual man. There's a man behind that named Pilates. He was born around 1883, moved to England just before World War I breaks out. They put him in a prison camp because he's German. And he was there for about the run of World War II, around 4 or 5 years. When he was in his unit within the concentration camp, the prison camp, they discovered that his unit all stayed healthy for the most part. The other units within the camp had all either gotten very sick, many had died because they're not keeping very good care of you. And when they went in and explored a little bit further, they found out Joseph Pilates had been running a fitness program with the rest of his unit. And that's kind of way they passed the time, but it also kept their health up very well. And he was running kind of the onstart of what would be Pilates now on the ground. No equipment, none of the reformers or the fancy things that we have now. World War I ends, he's released, and he goes straight back to Germany. He's not going to stay in England anymore after what he just went through. And he starts working on this a little bit more. He's discovered how it kept the unit healthy. And about that time, the Nazis start coming to power, and they contact him to start training the military. And he sees the writing on the wall, and he goes to the United States. He goes to New York. He meets his wife on the ship. They start this fitness program in New York in the early 30s. It just so happens that right above them or below them, I forget exactly where they were in the building, was a dance studio. And the dancers took to this instantly because it is all the rhythm, the flow, the control, everything that he was embracing is in dance. And so when the dancers would get injured, they would go to him for the rehabilitation, as well as for therapy, as well as for training. So what Pilates is, there's 9 key principles, but the big ones to have to remember are breathing, concentration, and control. And the movements are usually long and flow. There are some which go a little bit quicker, but the idea is to make everything very rhythmic. It really can look almost like a dance on the mat or in some of the other movements. There is 4 pieces of anatomy, or 4 apparatus that go with this. There's a machine called the reformer, which is what most people will understand and most people do when they're doing Pilates. Aside from the mat, there's what's called the chair, which is really geared more towards athletes because it just concentrates on arms or legs instead of the entire body.
Okay.
There's a machine called the Cadillac, and that's full body. It looks like a small 4-poster bed. You can really get in there and torture clients on that one. And then there's a barrel, which is really much more for movement in the back, spine alignment, and other things. And the idea of it is really to control and use the stomach muscles, the abs, and the core muscles, which run in the pelvis, just beneath the belly button, down to the groin. Most people aren't really working on those tight. There's about 5 different muscle groups that are all in there, which all overlay each other. If you're working out with weights, most of the times it's arms, it's legs, it might be the back, but most everything is not working your core muscles. And in Pilates, every single movement, aside from maybe 1 or 2 things that I could do, everything starts with the core and then works its way out. So the first thing that I always have people do is, when I have clients, is you take an inhale, and then on the movement, you start with a shh sound, like you're shushing someone, and you'll feel those core muscles activate, they cross over each other, tighten up, and then that powers legs, arms, necks, back, wherever else we're moving. Even feet, if we're just doing stuff with the feet.
Well, this sounds perfect, because for guys that stand hunched over all day or on their knees all day, like yanking on stuff and putting it in place. Okay, yeah, I'm going to, my back starts to hurt. Sure, I'm going to get like an arm workout, but a lot of what I'm doing is based on those core muscles and them being used, but am I using them properly? And then I'm down on my knees, and I'm probably, I've had a chiropractor on the past, and we talked about, a lot of times I got to reach for that tool behind me, and I'm going to extend beyond, right? Like I'm on my knees, but now I'm turning more than 180 degrees, or trying to. And like, how much can I pull on my meniscus and stuff before I just start doing tons of damage? And I won't lie, I got to figure something out, because now I can it happens every once in a while, and it's seeming to happen more, but like I can hunch over and like try to touch my toes in certain stances, and I can feel like numbness running through my legs now. And I'm like, yeah, that's not right. So I gotta figure out what's going on and what nerve is being pinched, or something's not right with how I'm treating my body. And I haven't even been doing flooring that long, so I don't like it, and I gotta fix something. So this sounds like something where I can work on not only trying to get rid of my beer belly, but I can do something to make it stronger, keep it activated, know how to start using proper motions and work. We have to work quickly, but that doesn't mean that Pilates couldn't necessarily be adapted to like a workout during the day and those movements, and you can activate those muscles. So let's start kind of working through this, right? So I'm using my core muscles. It's for stretching. What else is it doing for me?
Well, let's take it back one step, because you mentioned one thing. I don't want to put anyone into a different frame of mind than what Pilates will perform. And it's the same thing I face with a lot of my clients.
Okay.
I can give you an insane core strength, which will help with your balance, which will help with your alignment, which will help your active posture and movement. The one thing Pilates isn't going to do, at least the classic traditional Pilates that I do, if you go into others, and there are different forms of Pilates, I'm not going to burn you a lot of calories. The beer belly is not going to go too fast. You need cardio for that. And whether that is on a bicycle, in the water swimming, if you run, which I'm not a big fan of running. I personally just don't like running, and I don't know why anyone else would like to, except if you're having to run away from something or someone, why bother? You need that cardio. And so what I tell most of my clients is, if you're so many of them say, I want to be a supermodel. And it's like, great. When you're walking the runway, I'm going to give you that heavy great look and beautiful posture.
Okay.
You're going to need something else. You're going to have a really good walking program, something cardio to supplement this with, or the fat's not coming off, not that quick.
Hey, but
it would be a very slow burn.
Okay, but I need an easy win. Is this my easy win into like taking a step towards something else and starting a workout routine? Like, right? Sometimes it's about just getting that momentum.
Absolutely. And everyone's got their thing. I've got friends that run and they come out with that runner's euphoria that they all describe. I kind of come out the same thing. I mean, sometimes I go into a morning Pilates class to teach. It's like, I am so tired. And so I may have hurt something and I'm not feeling my best. And it's like, I have to do it because they're paying me to show up and give them workout. And I could just sit there and call out what I want them to do. And sometimes when I have injured myself and I shouldn't be doing Pilates, I've had to do that. But it's, once I've done the hour on the mat, I feel just so much better. And if I don't do it, then the whole day is usually just kind of out of whack. And it, for me, is that first step. I work out, according to my Apple Watch, and it's right, about 3 hours a day. At least 1 hour Pilates, and I'll probably get 2 hours in with the dogs walking. It may not be a very hard clip, but I can say at least it's an active hour. 4 to 5, maybe 6 miles a day walking. Okay. So I would never have done that. If you asked me 20 years ago, what exercise are you getting, Paul Treanor? And you probably yoga, which is fine, but it's not an active calorie burner either. So it doesn't promote the same core building and other muscle strength as you got.
Sure, you're flexible.
Like Pilates.
But what else you can? And look, flexibility is going to be a great thing. So I think that you were pushed to go from yoga to Pilates, which is still working on flexibility, it sounds like. And I think that's something that definitely as an installer on the floor we need, because we want to make sure that we're loose and we can move in certain ways and kind of push our bodies into probably some more uncomfortable situations than we would like to actually have to do. But even for people that are at the office, is there a way to maybe incorporate these activities? Like if you got yourself a standing desk, can I now work on my core development and my movements throughout the day that I'm able to kind of get a workout in as I'm just going about my day?
Yeah. I would say as an install, you're probably in better condition than someone who's spending 8 or more hours behind a computer every day, sitting especially. Standing desks will help because that will take some of that pressure off the lumbar area and the stagnant movement of just sitting prone without anything. So Pilates, for anyone that's in an office, definitely. I tell a lot of my clients, if you're going to be behind a computer, try to take a break, even if it's a couple hours, do some forward folds, do some movement. It doesn't have to be a full Pilates program. Take any one of the little things that I have taught them and maybe just do a quick round of single leg stretch. Anything that's just going to kind of break that up and allow the body to move and not get overly rigid and tight because we've been sitting in a desk chair behind a computer for up to 8 hours a day. So standing is going to be better. There are things you could do. If you're standing behind a desk at a standing desk, you might look a little silly. You could very easily stand on one foot instead of on both feet, or just try to find that perfect posture. So you're standing from head to toe in one straight line and just try to keep elongating the spine instead of hunching down or the shoulders come over or all those types of things. Same thing goes with sitting behind a desk. Just try not to slump and move down deep. Try to stay up. Try to keep lifting up. And it's as simple as you could just roll your hips. Just eat as simple as that. It's not even really Pilates, but pelvic So you tuck the pelvis and then come back out of alignment and then tuck. It's just going to keep moving the joints and the waist and the hips and all the muscle groups. Anything is going to be better so long as you're moving. And then I do think that those little spinning, it's just basically a pair of pedals that are attached to a base, and you just sit there and spin the little pedals. At least you're moving something. It's better than
there you go,
nothing at all. But for you as an installer, I could definitely see when you were telling me about reaching back to grab something. I mean, oh my gosh, that's bad. You're in a real big danger zone, and I would tell you never ever do that. Where I see a lot of clients and people end up getting hurt themselves is, imagine opening up the trunk to your car, you lean in to get in, you reach over here on the right side to grab the item, and then you lift straight up. And that is the one place everyone's going to mess up their back. Every time. It's that forward motion, grab, and not coming back to center and then lifting up and straightening the spine. Who's really going to do that except for a nut like me that does Pilates, and I'm scared to death of taking out my back again because I've done that exact move. So anytime you have a back movement reaching over, something's about to happen. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's not about being an old guy or a young guy. Like, you're just going to tweak something one day and pull it out of place. You're talking about, like, I think, generally installers are in pretty decent shape. Like, as long as you're kind of moving and producing, like, look, there's a lot of us that get chubby. I get it. But that just means our body got used to what we're doing every day. And then our after work activities are not living up to the rest of our lifestyle. So I lost weight when I started because it was an increase in like what my body expected to do every day for calorie burning. And now that, my metabolism slowed down a little bit and I'm getting a little bit older.
Stink?
It does, because it happened like right around like 30. So it's been like a decade of like just slowly gaining weight. I'm like, something's wrong here. This sucks.
Yeah, I have a bad caution for you coming up. Just wait.
But it's like, I think a lot of installers are like in decent shape from the work they do. It's a matter of what happens afterwards, and we need to do that little bit more. And so, we can kind of get a good calorie burn during the day, but now how are we strengthening everything and keeping loose and making sure that there's longevity to it? So besides the poor movements, which most of us know, like, you can just feel your body doesn't like it when you twist funny. It's telling you, hey, you're going to an extreme here. Stop that. Like, it's just turn around and grab what you need. You're going to be better off. Just turn around. Don't twist around, because that's no good. So how are we able to use this to kind of help push us forward in, we may get a workout during the day, but now could it elongate my career? Could I do flooring longer if I'm taking proper care, doing proper stretches every day, making sure that I'm doing correct body motions? And if I'm doing something like Pilates, it sounds like I'm going to train myself in how to handle my body on a daily basis, as opposed to just willy-nilly, reaching everywhere.
Yeah. I would expect that working a Pilates program or building a Pilates program, even if it's once a month, or ideally once a week, or even more, is going to increase that core strength, which will then help all the other muscle groups, but also strengthen the back and make it so when you're doing your work, it will make it, how do I describe it? It's going to take off some of the bad things that you're doing, like reaching back to grab something, pulling it over. You're going to think about that a little bit more, and you'll probably start with different movements. I'm not a very strong guy. I don't lift weights, and I find a lot of the times when I'm having to lift something heavy, I pull in the Pilates. straight back, and you'll hear me like make a crazy shushing sound as I start the core and then lift whatever I want up. I get a lot of crazy looks, but it works, and I can pick up a lot of crazy heavy stuff now. I don't do I've only been out on really one installer job site. I probably should go out more, just experience what you do, and it'll inform me on what I do. I see the big of concern for any installer is probably the wrists, because you're down on the wrists and the knees. So your joints in the wrists and your joints in the knees are going to probably have the best effect for Pilates. It's not going to repair anything that you're doing. And we don't really work on like wrist work, but the knees will get some extra movement. It will be movement that they're not going to see, and it'll just take some of that pressure off. And little wrist movements and other things that we do, you could then also take into what you do. And that could be done at any point when you're selling, but it probably takes a little training, a little forethought in the mind that, just to stop maybe and do some wrist turns forwards and backwards, maybe go into a stretch to let the knees have some time to relax, instead of constantly taking the pressure from the femur bones, from the waist, from the torso, and also help you to understand how to distribute the weight. So you're not all the way up on the wrist or all the way back on the knees. And then, of course, the other joints, the shoulders, your neck, the low back, all those things will be strengthened. Core training will help with that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to incorporate this into the multiple different fields, and I think people that are, if you're laying tile or you're laying laminate luxury vinyl plank, you're kind of down on your knees and you're stuck in that position. Just, you pick something up, you set it down. You pick something up, you set it down. You get into hardwood, and if you're installing like actual solid hardwood, right, you're bent over on this nailer, and you're just you hit it, and you've got rows and rows and rows, and I'm just, how do we work each of these things into it so that we can get proper body movements? Carpet guys are, they're kicking things in with their knee, they're hunched over, crawling around, using the power stretcher. And so it's a good reminder that, like, just get up and stop for a minute. Like, it's really easy to get caught up and go for 2-3 hours straight. And there's times where you can get stuck just down on the floor for that long. And when you go to stand up, it hurts. And we shouldn't be working like that. It's not normal.
Right. And the one that really, that's a great point you made, because I usually think of the carpet guys and those knee kickers. My knees hurt just thinking about those. But then you mentioned the guys with the hardwood and the nailers, just literally stooped over or in a half back, worse technically, because they're not doing a very nice half back. It's just hunching over. And you get into a rhythm, and you don't want to lose the rhythm because you're going at a good clip and the job's getting done. Unfortunately, there's a price that's going to end up being paid for that, and it's usually going to be on your bodies.
Yeah, well, and that's not what we want, right? Like,
no.
I hear a lot of installers say, I do this so that my kids don't have to, or I don't want my kids to get in this industry because it's too hard on their body. Like, if they choose to do it, that's fine, but I don't want them to ever do it. And I think I hate that attitude. Like, I understand it. Don't get me wrong. But if we build the right business, they may never have to install. But if they choose to install, I'd rather point them to a better way, or at least let them do it for a few years while they're younger and their body is good, get them that experience, and then pull them out and get them on the management side and let them do what they want to do. But something like this is going to teach them better body mechanics so that it's not as painful. And so there's good ways to do what we do in this industry. And I think it's overlooked because we just look at so many broken down people, but go ask them if they've ever done anything outside of just go and install and go home at night, maybe have some beers and sit on the couch because they hurt. Well, what if we went and stretched at the end of the day and did a little workout? Are we going to hurt as much?
Yeah. I'm sure the clients are just going to love the idea of coming in and here's their installer in a child pose, or maybe in a spine side stretch. But if I saw that, I'll also be like, oh, that guy's or woman, that smart person. I mean, doing what they do to stop and get some different movement and allow their body to come back into a little bit stronger position than that hunched over whatever form the installer is having to take. Yeah, I don't know exactly how that would work with Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, but with a little foresight and telling them like, hey, if I come in and I'm doing some stretching, it's because of this, probably not going to be a problem as opposed to, yeah.
I don't think they would care. But I want to see people be able to do this longer. And oh, it's so hard on your body. Well, yeah, it can be, but usually it's because we're so poor at the decisions we make. That I think it comes down more to that.
Yeah. It's the abuse of the body. It's hard because again, it's a very physical job. It also takes a lot of mental acuity to be able to. It requires both. So, but really, it's a heavily physically active job, and doing that for 8+ hours a day is, like we said, it's going to take its toll. And I don't want to imagine anyone going back with a bad back and just stretching out on the couch or laying prone because that's all that's really kind of left. There's nothing left. So it's a hard one. I wouldn't want anyone to have to do that. And the same thing goes for people that might be in management and sitting behind the desk or standing. It's the more various types of movement that a person has throughout the day, the better the body is going to be conditioned, because it's not just one thing: sitting, standing, hunched down on all fours, hunched over a nailer doing the hardwood floors. You need that diversity throughout the day. And Pilates is going to give that. Yoga would also do wonders. Pilates will just kind of amp it up a little bit more because of that core strength training. And you'll also discover more about your own body and its mechanics and what it's capable of and what you can push your body to. And understand, too, that there's some things that it's just not going to work. I myself have a back that's it's a very deep slope in the spine, and it's called a sway back. Whenever I say that, it's like, God, I hate that term because it makes me sound like an old horse with that big old group in the back. But that's how my body is, and that is very difficult to change. That very deep S curve in the lower spine is not going to go away. And Pilates is also going to take off some of the effects probably of what I may see in the future with that kind of back, which could lead into deeper scoliosis or curvature of the spine. So it's not going to correct that, but it's going to build up that strength so I stay fluid and my spine isn't going to be locked and fused together. It's always going to stay supple and moving. Same goes for anyone else as well. So there's certain things that I just cannot do, especially on the Pilates mat. There's certain things that I just have a very rough time with. And you could go in there and just nail those things and go right through it. But then there's going to be something coming up that your leg may not stretch into a very perfect 90-degree angle from the hips straight up to the ceiling. And my legs can go not that exactly high, but they can go pretty straight. So everyone's got, as I like to call it, they've got positives and you've got negatives, and you just have to work with the positives, use those positives to overcome the negatives. And that's the best part about Pilates, in my opinion, is you don't need to be ultra bendy. You do not need to have legs that go at 90 degrees. You don't even have to have a perfectly straight leg. A bent knee in some of these is just fine. That's just how your body is. So it is. And then there's other points where I get some male clients and they can crank out certain movements and do lots of weights and extra springs on a reformer, but then you ask them to do some of those crazy fluid movements that require a lot of leg strength, but also very work tendons and muscles, and that'll get them almost every single time. So everyone's got their positives and their negatives. You just try to make the most out of what you got.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt us for 1 second. When we come back, I want to talk about this awareness, right? Like getting to know your body through Pilates. But first, the International Surface Event, the annual flooring, stone, and tile sourcing experience in Las Vegas, has a unique experience for the industry. Introducing the Surfaces Show Home, Calibu Vineyard by Jennifer Farrell. Surfaces is working with celebrity design and TV host Jennifer Farrell to develop a 7,300 square foot show home in California. The home is under construction, but due to technology from Visualizer Plus, the industry can experience virtual room reveals each month. Then plan to view Calibu Vineyard in person or virtually summer 2022 during the home tours. Visit www.calibuvineyard now to sign up and join the journey. Johns Manville manufactures a range of innovative building materials, including products for the flooring industry. From GoVord to Evolith, Johns Manville products are not often visible, but they provide technical, environmental, and economic advantages to the essential items you are installing every day. GoBoard is an ultra lightweight and waterproof tile backer board, and Evolith products are fiberglass or polyester non-woven components used in the making of carpet tiles, LVT, and resilient flooring. All right, Paul, how am I gaining awareness of my body by doing Pilates training? Because look, I install floors every day, but I'm still not necessarily aware of the movements I make, other than like stretching way further than I should to grab a tool sometimes. And I can say, oh, that doesn't feel good on my back, or that doesn't feel good on my knee. So and I hear the same thing about yoga. Like, what am I doing that tunes me in to my body to let me know about the movements or how I feel and really grasp what's happening?
Yeah. Pilates is a physical and mental exercise. It requires coordination, and it's not just one thing. Like you get on a treadmill or bike and you just start going and go and go and go. This is one that requires you to, there's a breath pattern that is used in Pilates. And it starts with an inhale. And you imagine bringing and sucking your belly button deep into your spine as tight as you possibly can. And then the exhale starts whatever movement. So the breath is going to tie the mental and the physical properties together in Pilates, because you're having to literally think like inhale, exhale. Now, once you get into a rhythm, your mind can start to wander, but usually a Pilates program, everything switches up. It's not just one thing. And we can start on our back. We can move to our stomach, go to our sides, go to sitting, go to kneeling, back to our back. So it changes constantly. And it doesn't really give you a whole lot of time to kind of stop thinking about what you're supposed to be doing with your breath and how your legs, arms, head, back, torso are all supposed to be moving through space at one particular point and in conjunction with each other, because it's not just arms or legs, it's usually both. And in a lot of Pilates exercises, everything is activated at the same time. Core goes first, and then everything turns on in the Pilates program. You were kind of wondering about how could how do you recognize what Pilates could do? And there's a simple exercise that I bring everyone through. Usually on the very first thing we do in the intake is I ask my clients to sit. You can sit with your knees, with your legs out to your side. You could sit crisscross applesauce. You could be in lotus, whatever you want to do. Start seated on the ground. Bring your arms out to a T or just tight together and stand up. No using your arm. Just stand up straight from that position. And it's usually surprising to most people that it's a fight. I've seen people fall over on their sides. I've seen people just not be able to get up, or they're literally like throwing themselves in the air to land on their knees and then trying to like hover up. It takes a lot of hip mobility to be able to do that, to come out and come up. And that's the first thing is if you really want to know where you are at, let's try that. Just sometime go off when you're done with this, sit down, crisscross applesauce, and try to stand up using no arms. And you'll find out very quickly.
I find out often. So my daughter has Down syndrome, and so she has weak muscle tone. And that's one of the big things the physical therapist has worked on. Well, her different physical therapists have worked on with her over the years, is it's always a lot of like core strengthening and trying to get her to understand her balance and things like that. And so there's constantly once a week someone over here trying to like work with her and, hey, sit down like this or stand on these things, and like, you know, there's like, you know, so her feet are wobbly and not firm. And I've had to do some of those exercises because she's like, Daddy, your turn. Daddy, your turn. I'm like, oh, we don't want to find out if Daddy can do this one or not. And there's a lot of them I can't do. And the physical therapist just like sits down, stands up. I'm like, how do you do that? And now, granted, that's all she does like all day is work with kids doing these kinds of things. But I'm like, man, like that, just to have that kind of core strength to be able to sit up balanced and move yourself, I can see how it would be helpful throughout the rest of the day. I just, you know, we've all got our phones now and we walk around like this and we're slumped, and I'm like, in how many more years are you just going to see people with horrible neck problems because they're constantly hunched at a device, an iPad, a screen of some kind? And what is that going to do? And so I think having these exercises, and that's why we're here doing this, is like, it's not just about numbers, folks. We can't always focus on the numbers. There's other parts of us that we need to have so that we can continue to go. And that's what I want to see, because I don't want us to be the people that our neck is stuck, bent down.
Absolutely. And yeah, Pilates is great because it is a whole body exercise plus mental to go with it. Swimming is also very, very effective. Not everyone has the luxury of having a pool in their backyard, or may not want to go to a public pool. So it makes it a little bit harder, but swimming is the other thing. If you don't want to do Pilates and you love to swim, please go swim. Swimming is fantastic. That is just cardio and everything, but it's not playing Marco Polo in the pool either. You are literally just swimming for your life back and forth. Imagine you got jaws behind you.
Yeah, that's my son is he joined a competitive swim team. He's not doing competitions yet, but multiple times a week. And I can't even imagine how many calories that kid's burning every day just swimming in the pool for an hour and a half, because they don't really stop. They have them swimming for like an hour and a half straight. I'm like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
Yes, you could. You're just not conditioned. That's correct.
Well, yes. Difference. Okay. Over time, yes, I could. Yes. I could condition myself to do it, but I'd last 5 minutes or less right now, and I'm going to be over here. It's okay. What else are we trying to do? Where can we take this? What other, are you in any other, I mean, I know you, like you said, you're not a runner or anything. So if I can take this and I can, you know, swimming is easier on the body. It's you know, yoga is more stretching, but like you said, Pilates is adding in core strength. Where am I taking this and applying it in my life to work with other exercise routines, or just, you know, we've kind of talked about where we can incorporate it as we work to like stop and stretch, but is there a way to constantly have it be involved, that it's, we also talked about having an awareness. So I would think after doing this for so long, like you're very aware of your, now I can't think of it. Like you're not slouching. Like you're aware of like your posture, right? Like, is that something that you're just highly aware of, and like, oh, like this is not a good, like I need to.
Yeah. Outside of Pilates, I see it in almost everywhere I go, and everything I'm doing is, having been doing this coming up now for 4 years,
Okay.
not training, instructing other people. That's really only been 2 years. It's in everything. It's like I said, I wanted to get that extra inch back. So I always was like lengthening up through the top of the head, lifting up, trying to elongate the spine. And then once you're doing that, you feel the shoulders are back. This is too far back, but I mean, you could just feel you're sitting up taller. The shoulders are coming down. They're not coming up way up here in my ears. My head is lifted. It's not slumped. My feet are usually positioned right underneath my hips, so I'm fairly braced most of the time. Knees slightly bent, not usually trying to lock out the knees. It's in everything. And that carries through when I'm having to pick something up. The breath action comes in, and how I move throughout the day. Also, I was not that active, aside from yoga, as I was mentioning. I only started doing more walking with the dogs. It was 30 minutes a day just to get the dogs out, allow them to move. And then, well, now I'm feeling stronger and I'm feeling a little bit more equipped. Give me 1 second and let me let this dog out. He doesn't want to be my prisoner in here anymore.
No problem.
You can edit that one out.
Oh, no editing on this show. It stays in.
Perfectly fine. I don't mind either. If you're one of my Pilates students, you have a slight chance of finding that happen during one of the classes. The dog will not come out of her crate, and she'll decide in the middle of class, and I'll have to stop everything, let the dog out. So,
such is life. Yep.
Yeah, you get bonus time to see my dog. It really starts building itself into almost everything I do. Clients tell me the exact same thing. I have one client who is a self-declared klutz. She is klutzy. She will fall in a slight breeze. She's wobbly. She was on a power walk, and she hit a part of the curb on the sidewalk, and she stumbled forward, and she felt her whole body starting to go over, and she thought, I'm going to face plant. She just has been there before when she's fallen. And somehow she figured in that precise moment, basically how to stick the landing. She basically threw all her weight into the cord, stopped the legs, strengthened them, and then was able to stop and then basically lift herself back up.
Okay.
I don't know if it's superpowers or Pilates. I kind of think it's just both, but yes, a woman who is a self-proclaimed klutz, and one of her power walks was able to catch herself from going completely over and face smashing into the sidewalk. And she declares that without Pilates, she would not have had that power to stop, embrace the core, strengthen the legs, stop the movement, and lift herself back up into place. So it melds itself into all aspects of life. And what's that saying? An object in motion tends to stay in motion is definitely true. Once you start something like this, the next one is usually, if you're doing once a week, it usually becomes twice a week. And then once you got that a couple times, then maybe it's going to a strength training, or you start doing bicycling, whatever it is, for that extra little bit of cardio or whatever you want to work on.
So were you working from home prior to COVID? Because does Informa have an office in California, or were you already like remote for the most part?
I was already remote because the TICE team is all in Dallas. They're part of the infrastructure and construction division of Informa. It's all primarily Dallas based. I was already living in Southern California. I had moved back from Texas and was working for another show group on digital marketing related shows. And then Informa tapped me and said, hey, you live in Southern California. Would you be interested in working at Informa and working on some of our events? And even though there is a office in Santa Monica, I'm not on any of those shows. And they said, no, we'll make you remote, because I probably would have said no if they told me I have to drive to Santa Monica every day. That's long. That's far. I'm on the party side. So.
Yeah, just getting anywhere, I get it. Getting anywhere in California is ridiculous in the Los Angeles area. So, no, I'm good. But that working from home, have you seen, like you said, right? You weren't super active, you weren't physical, and so this was a change you made in the past few years. How did that affect you working from home? Because I think a lot of people have adapted to this working from home thing, but I think we probably do less. At least in the office, you had to go to somebody else's desk to talk to them. You had to like get up and go to the copier. There was maybe just a little bit more to do through the day. And now it's like, I'll work from home. And I see a lot of the people that work from home, they're like, I'll go put in a load of laundry or something. I don't know if it's equivalent. So how did this help you like break the routines around your house?
Yeah, well, I worked when I lived in Dallas, and I worked at a company in Dallas called Hanley Wood, which owned Surfaces, which owned World of Concrete and Pool and Spa and Deck Expo and a host of other events. Informa bought those events. So I can't say I was technically working for Informa back in those days, but I was working at the company that was going to buy the shows that Informa was going to take over.
Okay.
So I worked in an office, and then when I moved from Dallas to California on the digital marketing shows, I was commuting to Beverly Hills every day. So there is definitely, I don't think there's a whole lot to be said for walking down to someone's office or walking to the break room and getting a cup of coffee. Or even for me, my commute for going to Beverly Hills was a train, a subway, and a bus. And then I had about another mile walk to get to the office. So that was active, but it's not nearly as active as what I'm doing now. And I would say most people are driving to their offices, going up the stairs, probably an elevator. And then if you're just traveling between offices, hooray, it's movement of some sort, but yes. I can't really give a whole lot of bonus points for that. Working from home gives a lot more flexibility. I think a lot of companies too, because of COVID, were a little more flexible about letting you take a little bit more time away, because mental health and physical health were paramount, and they wanted to kind of break up the stress from COVID, and probably still, hopefully to this day, urge people to get out there. Informa is fantastic. I love the company I work for, not just because we're talking about them now. Anytime you would give me a chance to wave the Informa flag, I will wave it very proudly. I love this company. But they empower you to go and take an hour walk, go exercise, move away from the screen for a little bit, take breaks. They don't hold us down for, you must be working 8 hours straight through, and of course you get a lunch. But hopefully working from home and remote work will give people a chance to not, if you're getting 30 minutes, an hour back out of your day for what would have been a commute, try to go outside, walk a dog for an hour, ride your bike for an hour, do something different for an hour. You've got the hour back. It would have been lost sitting in the car getting this level of stress, especially if you're living in LA because of the traffic and
Yes.
and the cars. So instead of, well, now I get one more hour of watching my favorite television program, try to put that maybe to some good use. For me, coming and working remote, I got 4 hours of my life back. That's how much time I spent at a minimum.
Oh, I believe it.
Every day, 4 hours. So, I mean, it was a luxury that was beyond belief.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. It's exciting going to work in the office, but I don't miss it one iota. And because of that, and especially working remote, it's given me the capability of finding new avenues of exercise like Pilates. Because otherwise there would have been no way. If I had stayed in that same job that I'd had before, there was no time. Mm-hmm. It's literally get up, go to work, come home, eat, and then crash. Just like what you were talking about. No different, except I'm just sitting behind a computer. So anyone can find the time. It's just, where do you need to put your time? And family, job, even your own creative energy, wherever it wants to go, there's just not enough time. But I highly stress people, find that time, find 30 minutes. If you don't have a full hour, give yourself 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night. You got 1 hour at least. Yeah. If you're an Apple junkie like myself and on Apple Fitness Plus, one workout is equal to 10 minutes. If you do 10 minutes, they give you the credit for a workout. So, and it is, at least you're doing something. If not even very heavy physical, but just breaking out of that and doing something good for yourself in form of exercise.
Well, and that's what it comes down to is we do what we think is important to us at the time. And like a lot of us think that television show is important, or, going after work and hanging out at the bar with the guys is important before you go home and you have one or two, or whatever that little thing is. But can you give it up? Is your physical health deteriorating really worth the 30-minute TV show every day? Probably not. The other question I want to ask you is, you mentioned being able to, those. Well, okay, let me clear my head here. Is if I'm working, right, I have some guys on the floor, I have some employees. If I have them going hour after hour, I can only imagine they're gonna wear down. Whereas if I have them stop and the end of the hour, I'm having them do a couple of stretches, right? And I'm out on site and I'm supervising. I'm like, hey guys, it's been like 55 minutes. Why don't we stop for a minute and take a break and grab a water and do a little stretch here, and then put them back to work for 55 minutes and then have them stop. Am I going to most likely get more out of them instead of having them go for 3 hours straight and then be like, well, okay, you can take your 15-minute break now. And they can take their 15-minute break still, but they've already taken 15, like kind of broken up throughout the day. But I personally think I'd probably get more production in those 55 minutes bursts as opposed to just go for 3 hours straight.
I would have to agree. I would think that they would probably appreciate the break from the physical exertion and that same movement to find some other form of movement. I think the Japanese have been doing this for decades within their own factories and their shop floors. Is everyone starts in the morning and everyone has a physical program, to almost like a warm up, and then they go out and they would take breaks and everyone comes back out and has some sort of small physical activity, and then they go back in. And I think they ended on the same thing with kind of what we would call a cool down. So if it's smart enough for the Japanese corporations to be doing it and not stop, there's probably something smart and something positive in that movement.
It sounds like they're probably building it into Toyota's big on lean is what the operational system is called, and so it's probably being built into that. So very efficient people for sure. So yeah,
Yeah,
probably something to take away from it.
exactly. And we're all pulled by all our interests. And I am sure you get home from a long day and more physical activities, probably not the most enticing. I would probably guess tacking it on the morning, if possible, would probably be the smart thing for a lot of installers because it'll give you that warm up. And you're not going in cold. I'm going to take a wild guess that in most of your installations, you're probably not warming up. You're probably not doing spine twists, forward folds, a jumping jack. I'm sure you're going straight in cold, right down to it. And that's harsh. That's a hard thing to lean on the body just to go in and start that kind of heavy work without having some sort of warm up of any type.
No, that's a good point. Is we probably need to be aware, once again, be aware of your body and get it ready for the activity we're going to do instead of just jumping right in and abusing it.
I won't even start a Pilates class without a warm up. And that's just me personally. If my clients are like, no, let's just get going. Nope, you're going through a 5-minute warm up because I will hurt myself. I've tried it before and I've hurt myself doing it. So.
Yeah. And that it's not going to get any easier, folks. If you're 22 and listening to this, man, good for you. But I turned 40 this year and I can tell you, you're like, oh, that's not that far away. It ain't the same. Like that. It is. It's exponential what happens to you. You know, I can watch my kids run around the house and get a cut and they're healed in like 2 days and gone, and I get the same cut and it's there for a week and a half now. And you just don't work the same.
Yeah, I wished I had known about Pilates and had the foresight and the knowledge. That I can't imagine what, where, and how I would feel now if I was doing this back in my 20s. I probably would have said you're crazy if you'd show me this. I didn't even know of Pilates back then. But it all builds together. And while it can't exactly peel back time, Pilates will overcome some of those challenges. Yes, you may not be very limber. I've got clients which you ask them to do a forward fold and touch their feet, and they may get to their knees if they're lucky. And now, just the other day, one of my clients who's is in that particular boat, the spine was inflexible. She has kids and chased kids all her life and never really worked out a lot. So her forward fold is normally almost closer to a half back, and maybe she could touch her knees. And just the other day, she made a very loud noise and scared the heck out of me because I thought she'd hurt herself. Only turns out she actually touched her toes. She got all the way down and was able to touch her toes. It has taken 2 years, but she can touch her toes. So
that's awesome.
And the same thing for me. I'm flexible in some ways, not in others. You asked me to do a forward fold, touch my toes years ago, and I would probably get to my shin. And now I can't get my hands all the way to the floor, but pretty darn close. So you can take off some of the damage. You can take off some of those things, and it happens quicker than you probably would imagine.
No, that's good to know, right? You can regain a little bit of your flexibility and movement and whatnot. Paul, is there anything we didn't touch on that we should have touched on throughout this conversation?
Yeah, I got in some of those points that everyone thinks you need to be super flexible or super strong, and there's not. Mat Pilates is a little more difficult just because it's you versus gravity. And you're trying to hold your legs up as straight as possible and lifting up through the torso. And some things sound easy, and it really is very, very difficult. And other things are a little easier. So if you're looking at trying Pilates, mats are great because it doesn't really cost you. All you really have to do is get a mat. And from there in, all you really have to do is find your Pilates instructor, or Apple Plus Fitness has Pilates baked into the app. And they go from 10, 20, 30 minutes, and they have the instructor recorded, and behind them is someone who's modified so it's not as intense, or if you're new, you'd be following that person behind the instructor, and there's usually another person out on the other side who's kind of mixing it in between, if they're taking it like easy, a little more difficult, and then the instructor who's kind of going crazy. So you see pictures all the time of Pilates instructors, and they're folded like in a V, sitting on a rock in the ocean, and they're just so glorious and happy. You don't have to be those people. You don't have to mimic them. You don't have to. You just do as far as your body will allow you to do with control. And then when you're not in that control, you stop and rest. Perfectly fine. No instructor will ever get mad at you if you can't do what we're trying to get you to do, because it's just right now not in your capability and you have to take a rest. No instructor is ever going to get mad at you for that. So it's at your own speed and it's at your own comfort level. The last thing any instructor will want to do is hurt the client, cause you to pull the back or hurt your shoulder. It's the last thing we want. And I always tell my clients, you're your own advocate. You know your body. You know what you're feeling. And if what I'm asking you to do is going to strain, stop. Take a break. Totally fine. I'm not ever going to get mad at you for advocating for yourself. So if you've been thinking about Pilates or some yoga or anything like that, you don't look at the pictures. Looking at YouTube videos is great to kind of understand it, but they're always going to show you the perfect person in the perfect form. And especially if it's a picture of what that form is supposed to look like, all they have to do is snap that person in that right specific moment and use that picture. You're not seeing them collapse immediately afterwards. So don't overthink it. And there's different forms of Pilates. You got mats, you got reformers, you got chairs, you got barrels, you got Cadillacs. I think reformers are kind of probably a little easier just to get started with, because it gives you some tension because of the weights and the pulleys and the springs.
Okay.
Mats normally are just, it's a challenge. It is just a little bit more difficult because you don't have anything to kind of pull the legs or pull your arms or give you that different movement, something to push off of, like on the foot bar. So there's a Pilates in there for everyone. And I think it can be done by anyone. It really doesn't have anyone that, except if you have osteoporosis. If you have osteoporosis, it will take a lot of tailoring because, well, unfortunately, you'll probably break bones. But if you've got osteoporosis, probably a lot of other things will as well. You were the one that told me about your daughter and her and having Down syndrome. And I mean, since you have told me that, it's like I've been exploring it. How can I find other Pilates instructors to go and work with kids like your daughter that could use that? So you triggered a few things in my own head over time about how could this go and help kids that need to build their core strength.
Yeah, and I mean it's a game for them, right? You make it fun and entertaining, and they get something out of it, and that's essentially like all the therapists come over and they're like, yeah, it's you, hey, your friend Dr. Becky's coming, and like it's playtime, and like that's how all of them treat it for the kids. Is it's not, you can't tell them you got to work hard.
They're kind of have to tell my grown adult clients the same thing. I mean, it's almost have to pass out stickers at the end of it to make them happy.
Ooh. No, I love it. I think that's great advice that, it's not, you're not going to be the best day one, right? Like it's a journey to get the flexibility developed. It's a journey to get to where you feel that you've actually made a change in what you're capable of. And honestly, look, everyone that's listening to this, you need to be okay with that, because your business isn't going to change overnight. It's a journey. You have to put in the work and the time and develop it and make it happen. There's not just a switch that you get a flip on and immediately you're doing $1 million a year when you start. That's not something that just generally happens. So do the work. If anybody is interested in joining one of your classes, how can they find you?
I have a website. It's Pilates.online, Paulates.online. Of course, branding is everything. I have group classes most mornings, Tuesdays, Thursdays. I'm looking at my schedule right now. Things are kind of changing. TICE is coming back up. It's ramping up. So I'm kind of looking at that and probably going to be juggling things. You can sign up for a class online, or you can hit me up and I can get you everything that you need. I've got my emails on the website. Easiest thing to do is just go through the website and you can find out more about who I am, what I do, even see some of the reviews from clients.
Talk about branding, man. That's I can't believe that website was available. How is there not another certified Pilates instructor named Paul that didn't jump on that? That's amazing.
There was another one who was using Pilates, just the hashtag. And I don't know what's happened to him. He used it for a short while, many years ago. I can't get a hold of Pilates.com. I don't know who owns it. So, and they're trying to sell it for a whole lot of money. So yeah. I do almost all my work online. So it all just made sense. Pilates.online, since that's how I do most of my classes. Makes easier sense. And I don't have to shell out a lot of money to buy a premium.com website.
Yeah. You wait for it'll die down one day, right? And then you can grab it.
Yeah, they won't release, and I'll scoop it up.
Yeah, exactly. All right, sir. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights and sharing your expertise with us. For everybody listening, check out flooracademypod.com. You can find out all the places that we stream. There's the shop. Pick up an awesome t-shirt while you're there. And check out the file section. I've got lots of different spreadsheets and things to help you more productively run your business, whether you need to know your numbers, track your equipment, or if you want to figure out your profitability on different jobs. If there's something that you're interested in having developed, let me know. I may be able to find some time and find a way to put that together to help you or other business owners in our community. If you like what you're hearing, consider going over to patreon.com/flooracademy. Log in there, set up an account, super easy, $5 a month. They'll pull it right off your card. You won't even see it happen. It'll help, it helps make this show go. It helps me continue to produce things. I very much appreciate it. And everyone over there helping donate to keep this thing alive. And I believe that's all we've got for this week. So we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.